So I get to introduce tonight a gentleman who I met. What did we decide? Ferguson was 2014, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's been a hot minute. And so Paul Berry III is a St. Louis County businessman and Republican activist, has been at the center of some of the biggest conservative fights in Missouri, including opposing school shutdowns, COVID mandates, protecting both the Second Amendment and the life of our babies. Mr. Berry is seeking to become the next Missouri Lieutenant Governor to serve as the chief advocate for the people of Missouri fighting for conservative values. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Paul Berry, and he also has raised 4 daughters, right? 5 daughters. So what is with this? Okay, thank you. Okay, you bet.
So people say, Mr. Berry, you're one of the hardest working politicians. You're always on the road. I says, when you have 5 daughters, you're on the road. All jokes aside, my name is Paul Berry III, and it's an honor to be in front of fellow conservatives. There's so many things I want to talk to you about that's going on in the state, but I want to start a little bit with my background. Used to be a Democrat, believe it or not, many, many years ago. I mean, I went to college and came home, and everybody else that looked like me was in the Democrat Party. I didn't know much about it, but I was a businessman. I ran a bail bondsman company. Does anybody know what that is? Yes. Well, a bail bondsman basically secures, yeah. So a bail bondsman, what he does is he puts up collateral for a person to get out of jail, and he makes sure that if he misses court, the judge will give the orders to go get the guy. And it costs the government $0. Became pretty successful my first year. And that led me to my first issue with government, because I ran a clean business, but I didn't understand how government worked. I didn't know that people had their finger on the scale. I didn't know that by being successful, I would create enemies I didn't know, and they utilized the government like a missile to target my business. And they decided that they were going to shut me down for an offense that if I had committed it, it was a $10 fine. I go to lawyers, they just say, well, there has to be more here. You know, nobody does this to anybody. You know, the government will never do this to you. And after 2.5 years, judge in Cole County, because that's where you sue them at, told the director of insurance that worked under Nixon, and this is when Costco was in office, that if I didn't have my renewal of my bail bonds license within 10 days and 11th day, the director of insurance was going to be sitting in the sheriff's jail. And that was Judge Daniel Green that did that. After that, and you know, I'm a young man and I got a family and my business was ruined, shut down after 2.5 years for something I didn't do because the guys that I was competing with wouldn't work as hard as me. You know how I built my business? This is before social media was a big deal. I bought 10,000 business cards and I put them in the hands of anybody I could find. And people would get offended. They'd say, Paul, I'm not going to jail. Why are you giving me this? 2 weeks later, hey, Paul, I'm in jail. Or, hey, Paul, you know, and I'm in the St. Louis area to give you guys some reference. And I went to my lawyer after paying $87,000. And they think I should be happy because I won. And I didn't win anything. I paid $87,000. My business was shut down. I lost my home. I got so sick, under stressed, I had to have surgery. And I wanted payback. And my lawyer says, well, you need to talk to the elected officials, because not only did you spend that much, I can tell you that they spent $395,000 fighting you, and they were wrong. You need to go to your state rep. My state rep was a lady by the name of Mary Nichols. She's a Democrat. I was a Democrat back then. And I walk in, and I called her and says, you know, she told me about her office hours. Paul Berry III sounds like a pretty vanilla name, right? I don't think she was expecting this guy in front of her when he showed up. And I explained to her, I showed her the judge's orders. You know, I hired a state rep. His name is Jay Barnes. I don't know if any of you guys ever heard of him, but Jay was the state rep of Jefferson City, and he was a lawyer. And I just kept going through lawyer after lawyer, and they weren't getting anything done. They were frustrated. And Jay Barnes told me he wasn't going to help me. Everybody said he was the guy. So I waited till a Friday. He got in his car. I pulled behind him. I jumped out with a transcript. that showed him what they were doing. I think he thought I was going to hurt him. And he says, well, I'll read it. And when he called me back that Monday, he says, Paul, they're violating your constitutional rights. That's what I've been saying. Somebody is finally using the word constitution because nobody else would use it. You can't take my property, my license, my business without due process, without proper due process, without, not the scourges of people that just wanted me out of business because I was making the money they thought they should make. But I worked harder. I got up earlier. I stayed up later. They get mad, well, Mr. Berry, your bond, you post that bond at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was going to wait till 10 to do it. Well, I says, well, my kids can't wait. They need breakfast at 8. So I won the case, and then this Democrat lady takes the transcripts from the Administrative Hearing Commission that agreed, Judge Daniel Green that agreed, and everybody else that agreed, and took it and dropped it on the table and said, Mr. Berry, I'm not here to help you and yours. Goodbye. Me and mine? Are you saying what I think you're saying? She says, you're a smart guy. You figure it out. I live in St. Louis. Everybody always wants to act like there's rural and there's urban, but there's Americans and there are un-American. There are good people and there are bad people. You're not set by that by your zip code. And I can't stand it when in St. Louis, when I've been treated better in Southeast Missouri than probably my own neighborhood. But with that being said, I told that lady, I'm going to run against you. I didn't even know what a state rep did. I mean, honest to God, I just know they go to Jeff City, they vote on some stuff, and you have to run for it. That's all I knew. And I ran against her, and I lost. They did redistricting. I had 2 state reps in my district after by the time they got done redistricting, and I lost. And I decided that I was going to do something I'd never done before. I got in my car, and I says, this isn't right. Because if they're doing this to me, I know they're doing this to other people. So I went to the Democrats, which is not a good idea now, but just telling you guys the story, okay? I was in my 20s, so, give me a little slack here, okay? And I go to Jeff City, and I start talking to state reps about the Constitution, and they'll be like, oh, yeah, you're right, Paul, and then they'll never call back. And then they'll say, well, where does the public get their payback when the government aims himself at us like a missile and they're wrong? Sound familiar? New York, don't you? They will destroy you if you even push back. And I was pushing back on a very simple licensing thing. This is not the big ticket things that I'm going to be telling you about that I've worked on. And I was in the hall, I'll never forget it. I was just cussing like a sailor. I was so angry. I went to this meeting. For those of you that follow Christ like me, I've already asked for forgiveness a million times. I'm going to tell you a story. And I was in the middle of the hall, and I was just angry. I'm just like this and that, and I can't believe this, and these sons of guns. And I turned around, and there was this silver-haired, tall, white guy with glasses on. You may know them as Mr. Kender. And he says, son, what's wrong? Because I was having a Tourette moment. And I explained to him what they did and this and that. He says, second time I heard this, that's unconstitutional. That's what I've been trying to tell everybody. You can't do what they're doing. It's a bad idea because of the Constitution. I'm a citizen, and people can get hurt when you take their business for no reason. And it started a progression that caused me to leave the Democrat Party. Lieutenant Governor Kender walked me through things, and what do you believe in this, and what do you believe in that? And this is why I came when he got done with his Republican IQ test. I was already pro-life as a Democrat. I'm a Second Amendment guy. I'm a bail bondsman. Obviously, I hate overregulation, right? Because I just explained that to you. And I'm a small businessman, so taxes need to be low so I can grow my business. And just like that, I found that I was a Republican. So when it all started, I'm like, how do you become a Republican? It's like, is there some blood oath? They like cut your hand or something? And, he says, no, you just, when you file the next election, you just tell them you're pay the filing fee to the state party. There was a guy by the name of, anybody in this room know Phyllis Schlafly? I mean, that's probably a silly question to ask, I'm so sorry. But you'd be surprised where I'm at how many people don't know who she is. before she died, she brought me up to her office. A guy by the name of Ed Martin was in charge of the Eagles back then, and she was getting older, and she had wanted to meet me. And, you know, Ed's like, "Where's your tie?" I said, "You called me 15 minutes ago. I was picking up a fugitive. You're lucky I didn't have a shirt in the car." You know what I'm saying? So I go in and I meet this frail but sweet woman, and we sit down and we have a water together. And what Phyllis told me is that Mr. Berry, I says, "Call me Paul." She says, "No, I'm going to call you Mr. Berry because I want you to remember this moment." She told me, you gotta understand she's an older woman, so I want you to take these words loosely. Okay, we're not talking about somebody that's her age. This is coming from her heart, and I've always taken it as being kind. But she said, "We need you because your people will understand this message coming from you." Now, I think we're all people, all Americans, but I understood in her kind way what she was trying to express with me the best way she could. And I've told this story without that part of it, but that's the truth of what she said. She said that, "I've heard you talk." And let me give you guys some examples of what she heard from others. When I've run for office and I knock on the door and I'm in a minority neighborhood and I see there's 2 bikes on the outside and I smell chicken cooking and mother comes to the door, still has her nurse's scrubs on, taking care of her family, I'll say, "Ma'am, I have a question for you. Do you think you should be able to take your kids to any school that you can get them to on time every day, whether it's a religious school, whether it's a private school, whether it's a charter school, whether it's a public school?" I have never had a black mother tell me no. And what I just described, school choice. And then, thank you, sir. And then I go to the barber shop, and I always wait till some new guys in there. And if I get 8 new guys that are getting their hair cut, I call them all over. My barber laughs because he knows what I'm going to do. And I say, "Hey guys, I got a question. Do you think white people should have more gun rights than black people?" "Oh, hell no, Paul, what's wrong with you? I can't believe." And I said, "I'm not saying that. That's Lacy Clay and all the Democrats that are telling you that you're not responsible enough to even own a firearm. Martin Luther King died so you could have equal rights. World War II soldiers died so you can have the respect. You know when race relations got better in this country? When an African-American corpsman saved a white soldier. How do you go home and say the N-word then? I'm just being straight up with you guys. I didn't come here for a race speech, but I feel this on my heart and God's telling me to say it, so I'm going to say it, okay? That's when things started to change. So you're sitting at the table, that guy doesn't feel the same that way when somebody saves your life. Or then you see that there's soldiers that are willing to die like you died. Let's fast forward a little bit and get a little bit more cheerful. I'm sorry, guys, but this is on my heart. When I look at Missouri, first I'm going to go into a little bit of my history. So you guys told you how I became a Republican. When I came to the party, there was an ideal that I have of the Constitution and freedom and how it just doesn't apply to all Missourians or all Americans, but how it could cure the ills in urban areas. What I couldn't understand when Trump got into office, okay, there's one thing that Trump supporters and African Americans have in common. They both don't trust the government. Ask them, okay? I'm in black community all the time. They don't trust the government. I go with my Trump buddies and they don't trust the government. I'm like, maybe we need to be working together because soccer moms and baseball moms and football moms, no matter where you live and what your zip code is, they all want the same things. Freedom. They want their kids to have a clean life, an opportunity not to have all of the social ills and the devil forced upon them. Not just by some seedy guy, but our government, our libraries, our schools, our colleges, our universities, our daycares, our TV programming, our internet. Yeah. I'm 45 years old for reference. I don't know how these kids are going to survive. I have great kids. I mean, I love them. I mean, they're going to college and they're doing this and medical school, that. But I'm really concerned from a selfish perspective. That African Americans, I have family members that didn't have civil rights during their lifetime, and I'm afraid they're going to extinguish not just for my family, but for all of us. And that scares me. Yeah. So I was in St. Louis County, Maryland Heights, which is the suburbs. You know, it's not, I don't live in a bad neighborhood or things like that. But it just amazed me how you could drive 3 miles and the whole world changes. And why is that? You start looking at the leadership. I'm going to say something that's going to sound a little crass, but I'm going to repeat what I hear in the street. Out here, the white man this, and the white man's keeping us down, and the white man's doing this. And I'm thinking, hold on, time out. Your president's black. I'm talking about back then. Your president's black. Your governor is a white Democrat. All your elected officials are black. Quit chasing ghosts. This is the Democrat Party that is doing this to you. Why are you showing your loyalty to this party? Look, I'm going to tell you, the Republican Party as an infrastructure, I'm not on board with them a lot. I am a conservative. Yes, I'm a Republican candidate because I'm going to change it from the inside. But what I see is a lot of not taking responsibility for oneself. That is the biggest problem. The participation trophy destroyed America. Who knows what the participation trophy is? I'm glad somebody doesn't, so I can at least say what I got to say. Whenever they started giving everybody a trophy and there's no winners and losers and we're not going to count the score, it created a nation of people that have an expectation of success. I was a national level football player in college and an international level wrestler, okay? And the best learning that I did was my losses. I only lost a handful of times in high school. I can tell you every loss, where I was, what school it was, where the light was, where the hot dog stand was. Because it teaches you character. And when we don't allow our kids to try and fail and believe that expectations should just be there, then I'm going to show you a place that's not the United States of America. It's going to be one of these countries that's in Europe, where we should all be able to hold hands. We live in a republic. Who knows what a republic is? Thank you, because I love this group. Usually I got to get a flow chart and I got to go this line and show them, you know, God's here. God gives us rights that come down. The Constitution is supposed to make it clear to everybody else so I don't have to enforce my rights with a gun or a sword or whatever. That's the laws of men. But our inalienable rights come from God. All men shall be treated equal. And that applies to women too. What I believe, so to give you a little bit of fast forward, so I decide that, well, I had some people come to me, some public officials from Jefferson City, we call them consultants these days, came into St. Louis County and decided that they wanted to get, how can I put this to you? They told me that we need change in St. Louis and gosh darn it, we want you to run for county executive. St. Louis County is a 1 million person county. And I started thinking about all the good things I could do because I live in this area where I have a great neighborhood, but you go 2-3 miles down the highway, it's like Beirut. And I felt like it was coming. I felt like my kid's school was being pressured. You know, I felt like the economic opportunities may not be there for myself or my family to even stay in the region. So I decided that I was going to run for county executive. And little did I know, I was being promoted to run because they were trying to find what they considered a weak candidate so they can get the Democrat that they wanted in that would do all the stuff they wanted to do, which was corruption. Never had a problem in my life until I became a Republican. Next thing you know, I'm under investigations. They're saying I'm slapping grandmas. Some lady said I didn't pay the bail money. They're telling me I co-signed for my third cousin to get an apartment and she didn't pay. And it was all on the front page. So if I'm just little old me, a nobody, just a do-gooder, who cares? But I saw that, and I saw what they were doing. So I made sure that the Democrat that they wanted, even though there was a worse guy running, I made sure he lost. Because I can deal with a Democrat, okay? Because I know they're just wrong. And sometimes stupid, sorry. Good Lord. We'll deal with this later. But the fact of the matter is, The snake in the grass rhinos or fake Democrats that are playing as Republicans are the most dangerous things because you can't always see them coming. They'll get right up here. They'll say the same things. They'll say the speech, oh, I'm going to talk about guns. And I'm going to say I'm Second Amendment. I'm going to do this and that. Mind you, they're just too coward to say that they're Democrats because they won't get elected. So I fought and I lost. But Steve Stenger, my opponent, I put in prison for 4 years. Because he was corrupt, and they said all this stuff about me, and they tried to disparage me in the news, and they had my mother crying because she's watching them like, Paul, why? I said, Mama, would I really do that? No. But they said it right, Mama, you know your son. And my mother said, son, you're right. Because even the people that love you, we get brainwashed by this stuff. It's called an internet scarlet letter. And that's how, let's talk about who runs the media. Are they straight men that believe in God? I don't have anything against anybody gay, and if I'm offending somebody, I'm sorry, but I gotta talk my faith. This cabal in New York, in LA, in DC, that message to you. Who do you think runs the newspapers in these urban areas? Who do you think runs CNN? Who do you think runs MSNBC? We know who runs these places. There are people that don't share our beliefs. My guy has taught me not to judge. So I don't judge gay people. I don't judge an individual that has an abortion. But my job is to provide leadership for my community to move us away from the rocks. Not on a micro level. You will never see me chase down a woman that says, you had an abortion, that's wrong. Because my job, God doesn't teach me to judge. But he also tells me that I'm a soldier. And I'm going to get on the field, and I'm going to make that argument, and I'm going to change hearts and minds. Whether I have to pass laws, whether I have to have conversations, whether I have to bring them to my church, whether I have to have a conversation with them. That's what my Lord teaches me. So after I put Steve Stenger in prison, we had to have a redo election. And we all filed for office, and I remember filing, and I was invited to this meeting, which was really weird because they never invite me to anything. So I didn't know if there was going to be a sniper. I'm looking for the news. It's called the East-West Council, and that's when they bring all of the county executives in the region. They represent about 4 million people, and they have a monthly meeting. Why am I being invited? So I go down there, and I actually show up late on purpose because I just really thought there was something to this. It just seemed weird. And I get in there, and I'm sitting there, and there's a projection, and everybody's face is stone cold. Like, I'm just like, what just happened? You know, I'm a good reader, people. I'm a bail bondsman, you know. I know how to read the figures. And the guy says, this is what caught my attention. Between 2 and 3 million people will be dead in 3 months. I'm like, okay, come on. Now, I need to look at this screen. What do you mean, million people? They were talking about COVID. I went home because I didn't know what to do. I'm a pretty smart guy, but I'm not a medical doctor. I don't study pandemics. I didn't know anything about the subject. I did what any good father with 5 daughters, you know, some in college, knowing that they may need to come home. I went to Sam's, okay, and bought $1,500 worth of groceries. My lady comes home, she says, did you rob a grocery store? Why is there toilet paper and milk and what is this, a bag, a 50-pound bag of rice? Are you Asian? What are you doing with all this stuff? She's mad because, you know, she's a neat freak. I got this stuff on. Then the guys come in with the 2 deep freezers. She says, what's going on? I said, I went to this meeting, and the Fed guy said that there's going to be riots in the streets, there's not going to be any type of food, and 3 million people are going to be dead. I'm scared for my family. The fast forward, she works as a medical administrator. She goes to work the next day. They give her the same speech from the medical side. So she comes home with $500 worth of tampons and toilet paper and paper towels and all the creature comforts in the world. I said, you had a problem when I did it, but when you do it, it's okay. The point that I'm making is that we were reactive because we're parents. But you know what I learned through that system? It was one big fraud. So I filed for county executive. The guy I'm running against is that was appointed to take the guy's position when he went to prison. His name was Dr. Sam Page, an anesthesiologist. okay? And the first thing that he decided to do was that he was going to shut down our entire county. Now, you guys have heard of shutdowns, but I want to tell you the ridiculousness of what they did. I live 2.5 miles from St. Charles County. I would go over to St. Charles County to the grocery store. I'd go over there to eat. I would go over there. I almost felt like I lived there. Nothing happened. 2 miles this way, okay, and if anybody knows where like Hollywood Casino and like, you know, that's, once you cross that bridge, that's sort of where I live at. I live on a place called 270 in Dorset, okay? And it just amazed me that nobody was dropping dead in St. Charles. Well, they didn't know over there. They're not taking vaccines. There's no mask. But our entire 1 million person county is shut down. I start getting calls from business owners up in North County, St. Louis County. They didn't have access to the banks. They didn't have large savings. They opened their business because they're good, God-fearing men doing what we asked them to do, which is to put their pants on and work and not take it from the government, right? Didn't they deserve our help? Didn't they deserve our support? But I'm not elected to anything. I'm just a candidate. And I would work with the council, and they had 3 masks on. And people didn't understand my position. I'm not anti-mask and I'm not anti-vaccine, even though the media says it every day, and they didn't say it every day in my election. I am for personal choice, okay? If you want to get a vaccine, I wouldn't get one. But as a government official, am I really authorized to tell you that you can't? Because what if I'm wrong? Now, I wasn't, but I could have been, and I'm not arrogant enough to think that I'm always right. My job is to protect what? Your rights that come from God, that are in the Constitution to do what? To protect you from getting hurt for violating my rights. You see, I can go to court, okay? We're a country of laws. And I ran through that election, and they fought me, and they disparaged me, and they said I was committing black genocide. And then I found out that the Republicans that I got rid of their other Democrats that they had all bought, some of them decided they're going to team up against me. When I would talk to the media and they'd call me, I'd be like, oh, you guys are doing all these hit pieces on me from the Democrats. They're like, no, these are Republicans calling us. These are the consultants. These are the same people that got you in the last election for their goal to get you out, and then you tore them up. And you put their people in prison. One of those consultants runs around this area right now, supporting a governor candidate. He told people I didn't pay my taxes. Do you know who got arrested, okay, and charged by the feds for $200,000 and not paying his taxes he owed the government? The same guy that was running around telling everybody that I was a bad guy. You're starting to see a pattern here. Mess with me. I'm not strong enough. My Lord is strong enough. God don't make ugly. Go to jail. That's because I love my Lord and he loves me. And as I attack any monster, I stay in the shadows. And that monster goes right, and I tiptoe right. And that monster goes left, and I tiptoe left. And eventually that monster turns around. But I have a trusty rock in my hand. No gun, no bomb, but I'm going to hit him square in the head. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what I'm doing in 2024. I am running for Missouri Lieutenant Governor. The reason being is that, and first let's talk about what the Lieutenant Governor does. I know this is a smart room, but I've even learned things just by doing the work. They'll say, well, the Lieutenant Governor, he's in charge of the Senate technically. He votes when there is a tie between the Senate. That normally doesn't happen. We have what we like to call them supermajorities, but we have a lot of Republicans there that probably are Democrats. Won't admit it. But one of the things that I found is that I get to debate every bill, and no Lieutenant Governor's really done this. I get to debate every bill that comes to the Committee of the Whole. So what I want to be is the stopgap. I can't stop them from voting on bad legislation, but I sure as heck can bring attention to it. I can pull that fire alarm. I can call groups like this. I can send emails. As Lieutenant Governor, when I make a statement, it goes in the press. And they're going to say exactly what I said. And I'm going to say it from the floor. I know there's bad legislators, But there are good people up there. And I can attest to it because I see them in their families. I can see them at their houses. They may not understand everything, and you can read a bill, and on its face, it can say, yeah, I support that. But to understand the underlying effect of the bill takes a special skill that I have. I can tell you that I want to make sure that homeless people are taken care of. Who would disagree with that concept just based upon those words? But if we're putting homeless people in a position where they're going to always stay homeless because they can't fish because we're going to provide them their fish the rest of their life, isn't that a bad idea? But the statement, Missouri's going to take care of homeless people, what person that's God-fearing doesn't believe that? But it's the underlying effect of the bills that cause the problem. That's number one. That's what your honest ones. Because there are good people that just don't see it. But for whatever reason, God gave me the ability to see it. I can see it clearly every single time. And anybody that's been around me, when I set the precedent for what we were going to do as a state for COVID, it happened out of St. Louis County because we're the biggest county. The city was completely lost. St. Charles County was completely against it. Where I was in the largest county was where the battlefield was. And I was willing to fight and push back. So after I lost my election, I went back to my businesses, and I'm in media, I have media companies, and I built myself up pretty amazing since I was just a bail bondsman running the state, making sure that the guys that need to appear before court when the judge said go, that they went, and that was my job. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't figure out why. I just was told, you got to go. Judicial judge says it. I'm going to tear your life apart until you turn yourself in. And I did that for the public because when you're accused of a crime, you have the right to be tried by a jury of your peers before you're convicted. This is why we don't punish people before they get before you, the people. But once you violate that trust, it's my job to take you back. And they decided that they're going to do another shutdown. This is a whole year later. People were calling me, and I'm just thinking to myself, well, hey, you vote for Sam Page, maybe you need a little bit more medicine. But when you have people that support you, that love you, that stood by you, Jennifer Ann Barker, I don't see her here tonight, but I'm telling you, she's one of those people that helped defend me in my campaign, and myself personally. When they call, I come. And I went down there, and they thought they had the votes. I went to an African-American councilwoman who has a lot of common sense. She's a Democrat. She wears 2 masks when she goes out. Everybody says she ain't going to go with you. But I talked to her about the Constitution. I talked to her about what's right by God. I talked to her and talked to her and talked to her. And she says, Paul, I don't agree with your mask stance, because again, she thinks I'm anti-mask, even though I'm pro personal choice on certain issues like this, right? But she voted with the Republicans, and we beat them that night. Big claps, big things going on. The health director, and you're going to love this story, the health director storms out of there. Okay, and the next morning, he does a whole press conference saying that myself and my racist followers beat him up in the county building. Now, I'm sure there may be a couple racists in the Republican Party, but let me promise you, they don't show up when I ask them to. And there's racists in the Democrat Party, but you guys get the part of the joke. But seriously, I had 500 doctors write a letter opposing me and criticizing me. The African American National Attorneys Association, the Accountants Association, the NAACP, everybody came after me until one thing happened. One of the other councilmen was a former police chief of St. Louis County. And when this started happening, I called him up and I was like, Councilman Finch. And he says, I already know. Well, what do you know? I'm already pulling the tape. I was like, thank you. This thing was like the Saputo film during JFK. You got cameras here, and they got social media feeds here. And let me tell you the best part of it. You see how this camera is in front of me? Most of you guys have spoken at some sort of council meeting. You know that they stream these things. And where I was sitting behind this here, Had me on camera the entire time. There's no way in heck I could have did what he said. There's news cameras that are lined up this way. They filmed him walking out, and they can show that nobody touched him. Then they have security cameras. What does the media say after I prove them wrong? Questions exist on this statement. I said, sir, and sirs and ma'ams, because it's all the different organizations. There is no question when you're on tape unless you're saying that your own film from your own news organization was altered. They won't even admit the truth when you put it in their face. How American is that? How long before you just get angry? I always tell people all the time that I will always discourage violence because I love America, I love my flag. But to say that I don't understand those people, I'd be lying to you because I got that angry. Okay, once again, I told you how they did me in the bonding business and I was able to beat that. And I told you how they did me when I first came to the party. How many times do I have to be lied on before something righteous happens? Because I'm not just fighting for me. I'm fighting for all the people in my community. I don't care if you're party, I don't care if you're race, I don't care if you're sex, I don't care if you're sexual proclivities. The fact in the audacious expectation of life and liberty requires fairness from the government, not in life. You can't legislate fairness. All of us only want the opportunity to not have our government standing on our neck and to be serfs or slaves or indentured servants or people that don't have an equal right. That's all that government is there to do. Give you an example. Roads, okay? Sir, you could put a concrete outside your house. I could pass a rule that says everybody has to build a road outside their house. You could put concrete, ma'am, you're gonna have pavement. I'm cheap, I'm gonna have gravel or dirt. It's not effective. So we pull our resources together to build that road. In military, I got all kinds of guns at my house. I don't have a tank. I don't have a Stinger missile. So it makes sense for us to pull our resources together to have a military. But government has gotten involved in things that they have no business being involved in the first place because they don't do it the best, they're not doing it right, and there's no expectation it's going to get better in the future. So why are we involved? You know, as a patriot, I don't mind watching Russia spend all their money and their military and to weaken themselves against Ukraine. But when I start looking at $100 billion, I ask myself, what could we be doing for our seniors? What can we be doing for Americans? Because if you got that type of money, maybe you're taxing us too much. Yeah. How do you have all this money sitting aside?
They just print it.
That's the point. $33 trillion in debt. And who do we owe a good part? Who's our number one debt holder? Does anybody know? China. What do you think they're going to do when we don't pay our bills anymore? Does anybody know how we got Alaska? We got Alaska from Russia because they were in debt to us, and they gave us Alaska instead of paying $15 million. I think it was $15 million back then. I could have that number wrong. If I do, I apologize. But it was chump change. And that's where we sit. We sit owing China all this money. And what I learned from COVID is that when I was involved in politics, that all of our antibiotics are made in China. Our critical minerals that we need are made in China. Your cell phones, every cell phone in this room has China components. And when I say maybe we should divest from China, and I said this before it got popular, for other countries that maybe don't hate us as much, I'm called a racist. Me! I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't have anything against Asian people or anybody. I'm just saying the things that we need in this country should be built here in the USA. Because if we're going to, I'm not big on this government throw money around to make things work. But if we're going to subsidize anything, it should be food and medicine. I'm talking about from the development. If you're telling me you can't afford to make them here, but what happens when China says no? China had all the masks. Let's say masks really saved you. We know they don't, right? But let's just pretend for a second that that was a real case. They didn't sell us any. They said they needed it for what? Their home supply. And I won't even fault China for that. Because America first means America first. See, what our country can't understand is Russia says Russia first, and China says China first, and India says India first. But when we say America first, we're a bunch of lunatic racists. Yeah. I reject that proposition wholeheartedly. Getting back to the Attorney General's office, the Lieutenant Governor's office, the other thing that it allows me to do is to provide leadership. When I see the governor or the AG or the Secretary of State or anybody in government, I don't care who it is, I am an elected official with a soapbox that I can get up there and I can say what needs to be said. There are some good people out there, again, in our statewide. They're just uncomfortable talking about these issues. They've been called racist. They've been called this. They just don't want to even engage. They're worried about their next election. I will have that argument 10 times a day if necessary because I know I don't hate a person. What I do is I love. And I love my community too much to allow these Democrats to keep destroying us. And let's talk about how this happened. Does everybody remember, this person gets shot and that person gets shot and all the cops are horrible now? Well, let me tell you about people. There's good cops and bad cops. There's good doctors and bad doctors. There's good politicians and bad politicians. There's good teachers and bad teachers. Most of us are good and bad at the same time, okay? The bottom line is this. You cannot take a group of people, organizations, or anything and just cast them off based upon that association. You can't do it for black people. You can't do it for cops. You can't do it for teachers because there's good people out there. And I'm not going to disparage all police officers because one got it wrong. I went after bad cops in my town, and guess who I get the most support from? Cops. Yeah. Because I don't do it because I'm just trying to be cute or trying to get elected. I take the time to make sure I know what's going on. I decipher whether we're talking about a conflict of personalities or somebody being raped and beaten. We have a police officer, 3 days ago they got charged in St. Louis because he, as a man, he was arresting men and forcing them into sexual acts. Do you think for 1 second that because I support cops that I'm scared to go after that man? No, sir. And the cops that support me know that I don't just jump off because somebody with a social media account decides they want to protest. See, when I hit, it sticks. That's the difference between me and the senator in this region and the current Speaker of the House that are my opponents. You see, I don't just swing. I stick. I stick with facts. I stick with solutions. I stick with making sure it doesn't get bigger or smaller than it should be. That's what you want in a statewide leader. Not somebody that's going to go along with the winds or this website, this said this, or the Post-Dispatch said that. No, sir, no, ma'am. I pray on it. I talk to my fellow Christians. I talk to my fellow constitutionalists. I don't just talk to people in my echoes chamber that says, oh, Paul, you're always right. I keep people around me that disagree with me because it keeps me sharp. That challenges me. That pushes me. Jennifer Bird's one of those people. Jan Farr is somebody that came to St. Louis with a mission. Okay, this was in 2014 with a mission of increasing the African-American population in the party. Why does that matter? Why even focus on it? Because people ask me all the time, well, Paul, you're so non-racial, but now you're being racial. It's the recognition that this country is getting younger and darker. And if we don't start getting more people under our big tent of conservatism, the Democrats in 8, 10, 12 years could literally run this country. Don't think it can't happen. And that's why I fight. See, I would be happy enough running my businesses and doing what I'm doing and not even worrying about it. But that's sticking your head in the sand. It's disrespecting those that came before me. You know, I'm a nephew of Chuck Berry, the rock and roll musician, okay? And one thing about my uncle, he would have never broken through if he listened to the status quo. He would have never created the success that he had if he just sat back and just says, oh, I'm not going to get involved. They're down. Hey, they don't want me to play down there. I can't go down there. No, he stood up. He put his pants on. He laced his boots on. And he took what happened. No matter what, the good, the bad, the ugly, the great. That's what being an American is. Who see what's going on in New York? I don't understand. And this is the gosh darn truth. I'm a businessman that does very complex business deals, and I can't figure out exactly what they're saying he did. Like they says, well, he made $100 million from who? Because he got a better interest rate? I don't understand what this whole thing is. Tell you a story about Trump. Know some people don't like him. I know why I've supported him. I don't want a same-sex marriage with the man. I just want to lower my taxes. I don't care what he has to say. That's just, I mean, hey, call me what you want to call me, okay? But I'll tell you a story about Trump in Missouri. When Trump was running, anybody that was around politics knows that they were pushing Ted Cruz on you. Ted Cruz is one of my personal friends, okay? So this is not to disparage him. It's just telling the history. And I got a call from a guy by the name of Corey Lewandowski. I didn't know him. He was the campaign manager from Trump. I was running for Congress against Lacey Clay. He found me on some call sheet. And they said, you know, Paul, everybody says that you're a businessman, you have connections. We can't find venues that will let Trump come in. Because if you guys remember what's going on at the time, every time you turn on the news, the way the media would state it, it was just a hate fest of a whole bunch of angry white people that want to kill people. And some black guy gets beat up every time. It was like the same story over and over and over. Well, what Corey didn't know is that Trump owns casinos. And what does my uncle do for a living? He's in entertainment. So before I even thought or knew where I was going to support or what way I was going to go, I thought about it and told Corey I'd call him back first thing in the morning. And I thought to myself, everybody at that level should have an opportunity to get their message out unabridged to the public. I don't have to agree with the message. I don't care who it is. But once we start stopping people from you even getting to hear it, that's why I drove 3 hours down here. Because I can't trust the newspapers. I can't trust the media to tell you what I'm telling you today. You think they're going to let me say this as a black conservative? Let me tell you why. Because when after there's 1, there's 2, and there's 2, there's 4, and when there's 4, there's 8, and before you know it, they're losing elections. Because nothing the Democrats are talking about is going to resolve things. Let's look at the country, and this is where I was going with this before when I got on law enforcement. When you had these shootings, of course, there's people that don't understand the issues that say, hey, I don't want to be a bad guy. I don't want to support racism. I just want to, they're saying they don't support racism. I want to be over there. That's commendable in a sense, but they're not looking at the fact that what they're doing is racism. I'm talking about the Democratic Party here. City of Dallas. Anybody been to Dallas here? Anybody? Not the surrounding city, the city of Dallas. Not this past weekend, the weekend before that. The Democrat mayor who's African American woke up and told the entire state of Texas that he's leaving the Democrat Party to become a Republican. They lost their mind. Mayor of San Francisco. Don't get more liberal than that. I heard you can go up there and get a 50-inch screen TV, run out the door, and they don't even stop you. In fact, they help you put it in the car with the toggles in the rope. She said last week, no more aid to anybody in San Francisco unless they take a drug test. Chicago, they had this lady, and I had family members get mad at me because I said she looked like a witch. And then they yelled at me. They said, don't you talk about no woman like that. I said, look at her. She has witch's clothes on, and she did. It was Halloween. It was like a joke. People are getting murdered in her city. She lost her election. And then the prosecutor, Kim Foxx, resigned. Wouldn't even run for re-election. She didn't resign. She didn't run for re-election. Anybody heard of New York City? I don't think their mayor is too happy with Biden. They ain't talked in 2 years. The largest city. Why? because of the immigration influx, and the federal government will not stand up to the liberal wing of their party to say it's not a good idea to let 500,000 people, Venezuelans, into this country without the proper paperwork or channel. We are a country that supports immigration, but legal immigration. What's so hard to understand about this? When you have an African American population that's underemployed, but then you're willing to say, oh, well, all these people can come in, when we're not taking care of the populations that we have. And the reason why I'm speaking that way, it's not because of us, because we get it. But the Democrats are the ones that are proposing this. How can you say we're all black, this and that, but then you support these policies that take jobs away from African Americans? It's not because I got hate for anybody from Venezuela. It's the hypocrisy that angers me. But our party in this state does not have that leader that does that. Miss Winston, Lieutenant Governor, Byron Donaldson, and others, John James, African Americans that are speaking the truth in their state. Truth be told, ladies and gentlemen, I've never been in elected office. I've lost every election. I just told you about them, right? Oh, I did lose against Lacey Clay too, so we'll add that one. If anybody knows Lacey Clay, he's a congressman, okay? Yeah, it was, thank you. But the point is that I might have lost the battle. It doesn't sound like I won the war on a lot of this. The public is awake. They were talking about doing mass the other day. You got Democrats like, no, we're not going back there again. Are you crazy? Paul Berry had 500 people at the county meeting ready to, they didn't know what was going to happen. And you know what the police officers did? They stepped back because they knew we were righteous. They had told them to shut me down talking. And the guy says, I'm not doing that. And everybody looked at him and says, yes, you are. He says, no, I'm not. And the reason being is because the public knows that this was all a scam. If you believe in vaccines, take them. I, as an elected official, will never stop your access to them. But if you think for 1 second that somebody's 75 years old and I'm going to tell them what they need to put in their arm, you have lost your dang mind. Because it's for them to decide, not me. So going back to Donald Trump real quick, and get this call from Corey Lewandowski, and they're looking for a venue. So I helped with a venue. And I noticed a couple things that were going on there. First of all, there was the first cracks of people that supported Trump. And, I'm like a special guest there. Even back then, this is back in 2015 or 16. I think it was 16. Couldn't even been 15, Jesus.
No, you're talking about Peabody Opera House?
Yes, ma'am.
16.
Okay.
March.
Jennifer's been there with me a long time. She's one of my great supporters. So I noticed certain things that were going on. Like, for instance, when we left, there was a black guy that was 6'10", and I know he's 6'10" because I played college sports. I know how tall this guy is. He was huge. And he said the derogatory things to every woman that walked out that door. And I was thinking to myself, gosh, this guy's big. I'm going to have to, punch him in his belly button because that's what's going to be right here. Because I'm not going to let him keep doing this. And somebody pulled me and tapped me and seen what I was going to do. And they were like, no, he's from out of town. He's trying to instigate. And I started thinking to myself, I live in a big city, but you're right. This guy has an East Coast accent. He doesn't dress like he's from there. The bail bonds and starts coming back to realize that this guy isn't from there. They were planting people to cause this controversy. Sick. I don't agree with Trump all the time. I don't like how he talks. Grab him like the whatever and all this stuff. But he has to do with his own Lord about that. For me, elections are choices. And that's the unfortunate part. I don't think myself or any of these people that you see, except for the guy running for Senate, because I don't know him, and the guy running for House, but the rest of us, probably undeserving, probably smarter people, probably nicer people, probably people that can do it better. But elections are about choices of those that are called to serve and stand up. Who knows Holly Rader in this room? Can somebody tell me, and I'm asking honestly, and I'll pass the mic if necessary, can somebody tell me why she should be your lieutenant governor?
She should.
Well, when I look at her elections, because look, this is the thing. I know Holly. I consider her somewhat of a joke, but I try not to make enemies, okay? Because I like to go after people that matter. Like, I save my energy for those fights where I can make a difference. But when I look at her election history, she didn't have anybody run against her in the primary when she got in the House. They gave her the seat. These become the problems. You become entitled. You feel like that you're supposed to have it. They're supposed to give it to you. How come I've been around this state and she's never had an event that I'm at? But I have 5 daughters, 3 in college, and a business to run, but I can land my tail right in front of this group just because one person told me there's patriots. Dean Plocker, does anybody follow Missouri House politics?
Yeah.
Do you guys think that Dean Plocker is a great speaker?
No.
When they said the speaker got replaced, you know, I threw my hat straight in the air like that guy that got in the fight down there at the boat. I threw my hair, I was like, oh gosh, we're talking about McCarthy. Well, that's good, but Dean Plocker blocks the bills that I try to push on the Second Amendment. Right now, we have an initiative petition that's going to be going around to take abortion rights and to install it into our Constitution. There's a second initiative petition that's looking to allow local jurisdictions to set gun regulation. Now, if you're already having a problem with books, what do you think is going to happen when this liberal wing, which, like I said, there's supposed to be Republicans here, but some of them really aren't. They're not really about the Constitution. They're about the lobbyist dollars that they get to run their campaigns. That's what the whole game is. And how does the speaker think he's going to do more as lieutenant governor that has substantially less power than what he's going to do as speaker? I am the conservative option to be your next lieutenant governor. If you guys give me the rock, I'm going to hit the monster square in its head or die trying. And I'm willing to do that. Real quick, it's time for questions. This is I gotta be honest with you. I go to a lot of meetings, and the way that you guys work as a group is commendable. I don't believe that there's just one, engine here. Everybody's an engine.
That's right.
And that's what's important. So again, I want to answer policy questions. You have any policy questions, ask me how I would respond to it, how would I deal with it, how do I suggest we deal with it. One thing I want to say on libraries real quick, because we deal with this in my area, what we need is an intake board for the libraries. See, once the books get in there, it's too late to figure it out. The websites work because we use those up in St. Louis, and like Jim Fran Barker and some of our others, but we need to have the intake. Before the book comes in, we need a citizen board that's going to consider that. And they'll say, well, Paul, isn't that, no, we're just concerned about pornography on children. That's it. We're not concerned about all this other stuff. And some will say to me, well, Paul, they just passed a law, and now you got to get permission to be able to use the library. The problem I have with that, real quick, is that I don't walk around the library. It's like this gentleman said. How do I know? I'm going to walk in there and just say, hey, my kid's coming in here in 2 hours. Where are all the porn books so I can make sure she doesn't read them? We have to find a better system. But Jan, if you could please, any questions?
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes for questions.
Yes,
and then
ma'am.
there are several people who want to talk with you afterwards. So I hope
Yes,
you
ma'am.
hang out. Okay, all right, first.
Mr. Berry, thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate you
Thank you.
coming and speaking to us. So you touched on a lot of things that I really would like to talk about, but in the interest of time, I'll just touch on a couple of those things.
And I'm available to every single person in this room because I plan on serving you, but thank you.
A couple of things that I do want to mention right now. I'm glad that you brought up the initiative petitions. IP reform is critical for our state because a lot of things are getting pushed through or set up to be pushed through that are not going to be good for the state of Missouri. And so I'm hoping that in this next legislative session that we can see some movement on that, something can happen with that.
Can I speak to that real quick?
Please, yeah.
Okay, number one, it's not going to happen under the current leadership as much as they will lie, and I'm going to tell you why. If you look out of St. Louis, the Realtors Board and other PACs have threatened every single legislator that says, if you do IP reform, we will replace you or we will primary you. And you have what I like to call a couple yellow bellies up in Jeff City that decides which bills get on the floor and don't. What I am suggesting, and it may not happen, but just to tell you what my plan is, I wrote an IP that I want on the August ballot if the governor will assess, which would raise the level of IP to 60%. In the Senate of the United States, you can't pass most bills without 60 votes, right? So why is it a lesser standard to pass what should be in the Constitution? The issue that I have with Missouri, and look, I am an activist, and I do believe in the IP process because I believe that's how you circumvent the corruptness by taking it to the people. But with 50% of millions of dollars of out-of-state money flows in, next thing you know, we're under laws that we didn't even want. So you're absolutely correct. It should be at 60%, because if 60% of us believe that the change needs to happen, then it probably should. We've used IP for too many things. The Constitution is supposed to be the framework of rights, right? It's not supposed to be every legislative thing. You know, we're going to allow marijuana here, and we're going to do this and that here. That is for laws. The Constitution sets the framework. Use football terms. It's the chalk that you see on the football field that none of us are allowed to step over. That's what the Constitution is. I don't mean to go on too long, but I want to go ahead and give you more time.
So I ran as a write-in candidate for mayor in the city of Cape last year, just simply based on principle. The mayor we had in office and several former mayors were involved with a United Nations program called MRCTI here in the city of Cape. Being a write-in candidate allowed me a platform to bring this to light for the citizens of Cape, and so I decided to jump in that race about 6 weeks before the election. Since then, the World Economic Forum now has set up shop.
Yes, they have. We've heard about it.
In our city, yes. And so I would like to hear your thoughts on that and hear you speak to the fact that we do have the World Economic Forum here. It is something that I continue to push against with the city. Unfortunately, I don't have a sympathetic ear within the city at this point, but it has not stopped me from continuing to knock on that door. So I would just like to know your thoughts on that and what you think.
Well, your local politicians, and I hope I'm not disparaging others that may be here, but the woman asked a question, I'm going to answer it. Everything comes down to tax dollars. They want this here because they think it's going to be good for tourism and sales tax and all that stuff. And I don't believe that, you know, what the World Economic Forum, can I give you an analogy real quick? So my congresswoman is Ann Wagner. I don't know if any of you guys ever heard of her. Yeah, well, Ann Wagner went to Davos, okay? And my people around me got very angry, okay? They got so angry that they sent her back to Congress again. My point is that, and you know, I'm not ceasefiring with Ann Wagner, you know, on a lot of different things because I'm going to focus on some state issues, but that angered me. You know, what is my congresswoman doing at Davos, you know, when we have all these issues going on that I told you guys about that she wasn't there for? So the way that you have to address that is first, make sure that you articulate exactly what this forum is doing, what they're standing for, and we have to do a better job at documentation. This room isn't lazy. But unfortunately, there are people that vote that don't take the time to really figure out what's really going on. And what do we stand for as a state? What do we stand for as a community here? How I could address that at the state level, I've always been honest when people ask me questions, okay? And this would be more of a replace local officials and PR campaign. I don't know if there's a state law that could be written And I'm willing to hear any suggestions, okay? Because I'm going to tell you, I will tell you that I think I'm smart, but I don't know everything. But the key is that there's a sense of being able to have the First Amendment right to speak, like this gentleman was stating, and then figuring out what incentives are they have to pick Cape Girardeau. Because I find it interesting. Let me just tell you what I say just as a guy that just came down here. Why would you have the World Economic Forum anywhere where there's no major airports at? Has anybody thought about that for a second? But I mean, all jokes aside, but how are they getting here? Are they taking the Huckleberry Finn? My point that I'm making is these things usually are located in large cities with airports. And why is it that they pick Cape? And I heard everybody say the water, but educate me, please. Somebody answer that for me. Sir, you, sir.
College to indoctrinate our kids. That's exactly what they're doing.
So they're using Southeast as their home base for this. Okay, then that's, I'm sorry.
College.
Then
we have the local area newspaper.
Well, the university supported them coming.
Right.
And the current mayor and the former mayor supported them coming.
Then-
And the local newspaper supported them.
then it's Board of Trustees that we have to go after. Now you're talking about something I can get involved in because there's state funds that are utilized for universities. See, as an entity by itself, it's different. You understand what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot. Ku Klux Klan came to my street one time, okay? There's not much I can do about it other than have my gun ready. But what you're talking about is being housed at Southeast Missouri State. Is that what we're saying?
I know several of the members are active at the university. They do have positions.
Well, one thing I can tell you, the governor usually has appointment power within the University of Missouri system, and that's how we address that. And as lieutenant governor, what I can do is be a voice to the governor, because whoever's going to be governor out of all three, I have my favorite. We don't endorse statewide and other statewides. You just get in trouble doing it. But I know that I have the ear of all three that will be. And the last thing they want is their lieutenant governor telling the governor he ain't nothing. Because what happens is if they don't do the right job, then I'm running against them in 4 years. It's better to deal with the issue, and that's the problem with some of these politicians. I know she needs to speak, but I need to say one more thing. I have a theory on all policy called the brick wall and the grassy knoll. And Paul Berry III is the grassy knoll. And they'll look at the brick wall, which is the lobbyists, the fat cats, the backpacks, and the person will say, I don't want to climb that wall. That wall, it looks high and, it's going to be hard to climb it, so I'm going to walk on Paul Berry III. Well, what they know, and I'm going to teach you guys throughout this time, is Paul Berry III has all the landmines. So walk on that grassy knoll all you want, but you're not going to have a leg when you get done, and you're going to wish, you're going to look back at that wall and say, I should have just went over the wall. The point is that I won't sell you out, and I'll fight for you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate your comments. You mentioned a lot of things that are happening at the national level, and of course, we're concerned about protecting Missouri.
Yes, thank you.
And one of the things that you touched on was the border and illegals coming to our country. They're in our state, they're in our local community. I love people. However, I think things, as you have stated, should be done legally and in an organized manner and in a way that they are visitors to our country and those with intentions of staying are
They join our country.
Taught about our national values and do agree to them. What would you do regarding illegals in our state and how that relates to benefits going to them, jobs being given to them, IDs being given, in that they get to take advantage of the benefits without having actually legally entered?
I love this question, thank you. And I appreciate you, and you're right, I did talk a little bit about federal because I got into the more presentation part, but you're right, I'm running for lieutenant governor. And the bottom line is this, we don't give it to them. We ban that. And you walk into a store and you steal a candy bar, at least you used to be, at least when I was growing up as a kid, you go to jail. Or at least the police come and charge you or something, right? It's illegal to be in this state and not be a citizen. And when you create these sanctuary areas, This is the problem with Missouri. St. Louis City, I watched 2 weeks ago, they have a whole program to bring a whole bunch of illegal aliens to start working, and they got jobs, and they got housing, and they got all these different things. And I asked my legislators about it, and they're like, well, Paul, what are you talking about? I'm like, they are making, and like, there's no, I gotta take my hat off. There is no focus on the things that you're talking about. And that's the problem. I don't expect somebody in a different area that doesn't have this on their front steps to have the same passion. But that's the problem with our party. We don't have anybody, we have no night watchman. We have nobody that's watching the wall. So as far as I'm concerned, you don't get a license. You don't get to go to school. You don't get the permit. And people say that this is draconian, I'm un-American. No, because American Ellis Island, it said, all come one, come all, but it also said go through the gates and get your shots. And that's not what we're doing anymore. You know, the smartest thing, I'm going to go federal again, I'm sorry, but it affects what you're saying. The smartest thing that I ever seen in politics is when that Texas governor started putting them on buses north. He knew something. At first, I thought it was a stunt. I was sort of angry. I'm like, oh, this is just a stunt. You know, they got 50 people on the bus. How is that going to... And I was really upset because if you don't have serious solutions, then it's a game, right? And I don't play games. I'm serious about this.